The Indianapolis Colts are in need of a wide receiver in this draft class, and Jake has found the perfect height, weight, speed specimen to throw on this team. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Zach Hicks, that's Jake Arthur, and today we are back with yet another prospect spotlight for the 2026 NFL Draft. We've been cranking these out lately to give you guys some more insight on more prospects in this upcoming draft class, hoping that we get a couple of these right for the Colts. So then you guys have, some brief breakdowns on these players after the Colts select them. But even if they don't take them and a divisional rival takes one of these players, you have some insight onto the new player that you'll see twice a year at the least. Today, we are going to Georgia State for wide receiver Ted Hurst. Back-to-back days where we've highlighted a wide receiver from a smaller school. Yesterday was UConn wide receiver Skylar Bell, and today Jake goes with a Senior Bowl player, Senior Bowl standout, a combine standout in Ted Hurst. So, Jake, give me the sell. What are you seeing from Ted Hurst on film that has you wanting him for the Indianapolis Colts?
Yep. So this is kind of another self-made guy that we're talking about here. Worked his way up from Valdosta State his first couple years up to Georgia State. Has been a 3.5-year starter. I think for a receiver, that's a big deal, especially if you're able to maintain productivity throughout. Because the old adage from small school or like Division II FCS tape, basically what people say is you better be able to identify the guy you're supposed to be watching quickly at that lower level, and you better kind of dominate the competition as well. Hurst has the productivity and the starting experience. He has increased his stats each year. He has 187 catches for 2,992 yards, which is a 16-yard per catch average, and 25 touchdowns throughout his college career. We've talked about productivity being something that is an important indicator for receivers in college. You don't see a lot of guys that didn't produce in college going on to be stars in the NFL. So he's got the track record so far. And then, of course, like you mentioned at the top, went to Mobile at the Senior Bowl and did really, really well there against some of the top cornerbacks in the entire nation. As a player, you're looking at a guy that's 6'4", 206 pounds, still only 21 years old. A lot of these small school guys, they've been around forever, so they're 23, 24 years old. He's only 21 right now. Was a standout at the combine, ran a 4.42 with a 1.55 10-yard split, and then had a 36.5-inch vertical with a wide receiver leading 11-foot 3-inch broad jump at the combine. Again, led all receivers. So height, weight, speed, explosive, productive. When you look at him on the field, luckily for me, he's not one of those guys that has really questionable hands. Like his hands are just fine. I think he's got some wiggle in the hips as well. So he's not a real rigid, just has to stay on a straight line type of athlete like a lot of these lanky receivers are. So while I think he comes into the league probably at a similar pace to Alec Pierce, a similar role where you're just looking at mostly like a vertical threat, deep in breaking guy, like a chunk play guy. I think he does have, I think he has the ability to develop into so much more over the first couple years of his career. Now, I think you kind of have to have a plan for a guy like this. So you have to be very deliberate in the way that you develop him. I don't think you just throw him out there or throw him into a niche box right away, because you have to, a guy with that broad of a skill set, I think you have to feed that a little bit. These guys, I think, kind of get neutered and they don't wind up developing if they are just relegated to, hey, you're the 9 route guy. Like that's what you're going to do for us consistently. So I do think he's got plenty of ability to be an every down receiver within his first couple years. But when you're looking at like a team like the Colts, I think he would fill a nice little role for what they need initially, which is just kind of receiver by committee this year, because you're probably not finding a bona fide starter opposite of Pierce.
Yeah, and what I really like about Ted Hurst's film is kind of like you mentioned, like he's a big athletic guy, but he's not, it's not like I'm going to get downfield on you and win a contested catch situation, right? It's more of like using his long legs to outstride you and run away from guys. And I think a really good role for him, especially with the Colts looking for a Z wide receiver, which we'll talk about more in the next segment here, is getting him off press coverage, away from press coverage, because Alec Pierce is going to be taking a lot of the press this next season. Getting him off that, getting him in some stacked alignments, and just getting him on these routes is what I call run away from them routes. Drag routes, crossers, routes where they're coming across the field, and just using that long leg, that explosiveness that we saw at the combine to get away from defenders. So while I've been pretty open about like, hey, I don't think the Colts need this like 1-to-1 Michael Pittman Jr. replacement. We don't need this 6'5", 230-pound guy who is a tough catch guy. They need some more juice. They need a guy who can play off of press and work in those stack bunches and just get open and create after the catch. I think Hurst, of all like the bigger receivers in this class, fits that more than most, because there's so many clips of him last year where you're getting him the ball in the 10 to 15 yards down the field range on these like crossers or digs or in breaking routes. And he's able to catch it and transition to being a ball carrier and outrun the defense. And I know he was doing that at Georgia State, but I do think that the testing numbers do show up on film. So yes, it's not like the perfect fit, but when we're talking like round 3, round 4, you're probably not going to find the perfect fit. I do like his traits. I like what he can bring. And I like his fit as the Z receiver that the Colts are looking for in this draft.
Yeah, without a question. I think, again, when you look at these kind of height, weight, speed guys, they usually, I feel like most commonly, they have 2 big question marks. They have questionable hands or they can't turn. And that's not really the case for him. His but is that he comes from Valdosta State and Georgia State, so I think you can live with that. Like, guy comes from a lower level of competition, but kind of answered the questions you were looking from him throughout the process so far. So again, like you said, 3rd or 4th round pick, you could do so much worse than this.
Yeah, I will say another but for me is like, how well does he play through physicality at the next level, which will
That's
be a
fair.
huge one.
Yeah.
Played well at Senior Bowl, so I think that's a good step. But being a bit of a slender frame with his size and more of like a run away from them threat, can he, if he has to face press at all, can he get off press? Can he fight through the contact that defenders will give him throughout the route? And can he survive the getting hit after he catches the football? That will be the big question for him, but I still think there's a role there for him, and I think the Colts are a team that can marinate him into being a pretty good receiver. So Ted Hurst, Jake and I are both pretty high on, and I would be a fan of taking him in that like round 3-ish range, but we'll see what Jake's opinion is on where he would take him coming up in just a second. But first, this episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now. It's not just about the numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means that you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it. Financials and just everything, especially this time of year with tax season, have been very stressful for me. And it take a while to kind of get used to it and try to dig yourself out of these holes. Just always know that you're not alone. And something like therapy, it's not about the financial advice. It's about working through that stress, working through that anxiety and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When the life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Alrighty, Locked On Colts everydayers. We are back talking all about Georgia State wide receiver Ted Hurst, a player that our boots on the ground Jake Arthur saw in person down at the Senior Bowl and has got to know a little bit throughout this draft process. So I said I'd be cool with him in like the 3rd round. I don't know if there's a way I could go up to round, maybe trade back in round 2. I'd be fine with him. But Jake, what's your opinion? Like, where do you think his stock is in terms of like where you take him? I know he's had a lot of like top 30 visits and a lot of interest from teams. So let's say like it came down to it where he's like the best receiver on the board at 47 for you. Would you pull the trigger at 47 or would you like a trade down or round 3 better?
No, I would not do 47. Like, I'm pretty anti receiver being your first pick with what they need on defense. That doesn't mean I don't like him, but he's not my favorite option in the world there in the 2nd round. I do think what would be the perfect scenario is, you trade down in the second round. That's going to net you probably an extra 4th round pick. You take him there at 78 with the 3rd, or with that first 4th round pick that you've got. I don't think you're going to be able to get him beyond the 4th round. You may not be able to get him at all in the 4th round. I think there might be teams, again, like you mentioned, he's a very well-traveled guy right now, including the Colts. The Colts have hosted him for a visit. You're probably going to have to get him in the 3rd if you like him that much. And the Colts, we've talked about, like, some mixture of their first few picks needs to be edge, linebacker, and receiver. I'm just trying to, I think I go day by day sorting out what that order is. You know what I mean? And I mean, they're not going into it with a rigid order. I mean, they have goals, I think, positions they'd like to fill, but they'll ultimately let the board dictate that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm trying to think of a pro comp for him going through this, like a lengthy, long-legged receiver that can outrun players, but maybe some physicality and like even some of the. I don't think he wins vertically super. Like he does win vertically, but I don't think that's his calling card.
Right.
Like I think it's
He
more.
can, and he can get some contested catch jump ball stuff. But
Yeah, so while I'm going through every single team in my head. While I'm doing that, Jake, go into like how you would use him in year one. I know you've kind of talked
yeah,
about like a by committee approach, but to me, I'd probably give him like most of the snaps at Z receiver. Like
I think so.
you want to get more snaps to Josh Downs, obviously. So I think
Mhm.
Downs usage will go up for sure. But like I'd give him most of the snaps, get Doolin in there for some blocking stuff. But like if you take Hurst in like round 3, I think you're giving him most of the snaps out there.
Yeah, and we know Shane Steichen loves his crossers and his shallow stuff. The mesh and just anything getting guys streaking across the middle. And like you mentioned, I think that is a good little role for him. How Michael Pittman Jr. was that guy that drug across the middle of the field with the yards after catch opportunities. Yeah, like that's a guy who's a big body and is going to be able to pick up extra yards with the ball in his hand if you get him out in stride. So I like that quite a bit. Um, I know I said I wouldn't pigeonhole him into just vertical stuff, but you certainly can. Like, I picture, play action. He's your guy on the boundary. That's, going deep on it on the outside one-on-one. I mean, I know Alec Pierce is going to get a lot of that,
Yeah.
but there could be opportunities for you to do that, like you did with AD Mitchell.
I actually
Um,
like him as like if you're doing play action, like the
mhm.
Yankee calls where you have Pierce doing the deep post and you have the
Yeah.
deep crosser underneath it. I like
Yes.
him a lot as that deep crosser underneath.
I think he could do that. Him
Yeah.
on deep on the big in breaking stuff, I think would be pretty beneficial.
Well, because that was the thing, right? With Pittman, you could never really hit the deep crosser on those
Yeah.
Yankee calls. It was mostly Pierce or check down because look, Pittman's a great receiver. He's just not super athletic. He's not going to run away from guys unless it's
Mhm.
schemed up that way and there's a coverage breakdown. Hurst can run away from guys if you give him. So if you have on these like max protection, play action Yankee calls, and you get the corner and the deep safety running with Pierce, and you just get one corner with Hurst, and Hurst just has all that open field to run away. I think that can be an awesome. I said the same thing with Skylar Bell yesterday, but I think Hurst
Mhm.
could probably pull away even better than Bell could because of the long legs and the speed that he has.
I like that. It's funny because I didn't find myself coming to this conclusion much, but do you remember when Pierce was coming in and a lot of people compared him to Jordy Nelson because the wide receiver thing and everything? And it's like they just weren't really that similar type of player.
Yeah.
Nelson just had more wiggle to him, but now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, Ted Hurst is kind of like Jordy Nelson, young Jordy Nelson in a way. Like when the Packers won the Super Bowl and Nelson was like really young. Like
Okay.
I could kind of see that.
I don't hate
Now,
it.
Nelson developed into like he got to the lizard brain thing with Aaron Rodgers and it completely took off from there, but like it's interesting. If you get Ted Hurst with a young quarterback at some point and they form that strong bond, but no, I mean, especially for a guy like Daniel Jones, who I think especially this year, you're going to be living with a lot of rhythmic stuff. Like you're probably not uncorking it as much as you did last year. But those rhythmic yards after catch, almost West Coast concepts, I think he could fit into that decently well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually kind of like the Jordy Nelson comp there a little bit. Like
You're welcome.
I'm not saying I love it because it's hard when you comp a guy to like, a Ring of Honor level player,
Sure.
or higher.
Play style. It's up to him to fill the actual shoes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But it's better than like the Christian Watson I kept coming back to. I'm like, well, that's like a long-legged, like big receiver.
Yeah.
If we're looking over at Mock Draftable real quick before we get out of here, his top comps are like just a bunch of dudes in this current draft.
Don't you
Cedric,
hate that? It's like
I
that's not
know.
yeah.
Cedric Tillman is in here. We
Okay.
have Yeah, everybody from Justin Hunter from back in the day. That's a throwback right
Yo,
there.
okay. Now that you say, okay, wow, Justin Hunter, that's like perfect. That's who started the anti-Tennessee wide receiver thing. Why
Right.
no one likes Tennessee wide receivers? Because of Justin Hunter, first and foremost.
Yeah, we got A.T. Perry in here from a couple years ago, but outside of that, it's just guys in this draft like Stribling and J. Michael Sturdivant as well. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy we like at least. So I could
Yeah,
Ricardo Lewis is on here as well. That's another one. That's interesting. But yeah, Justin Hunter, low end comp, Christian Watson, middle end, and Jordy Nelson, high end comp. That's what we're going to stamp it as
I
right
like that.
here on today's prospect spotlight. But Ted Hurst overall, I enjoy his film. I think he's a good player, and I think the Colts would be good to have him. That is all we have for today. And while I pull up my closing script real quick here, make sure you are following us on socials at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2. Again, all on all social medias there. Make sure you're checking out the Indy Draft Guide that just released the last couple days. We'll have the link to that in the show notes. And I'm still pulling this up. Jake, do you have the closeout in front of you?
I do
Okay,
actually,
thank you.
but yeah, guys, the Everydayer Club as well. We have not plugged that yet, but it's that thing's really active this time of year, especially with the draft. Everyone's throwing in the rumors and everything. It's basically everyone who listens and watches this show is just hanging out in the chat, all throughout the time. So that is at lockedoncolts.supercast.com. We also have a link for it in our show notes. But with that, we're going to have our full length show here in just a moment. Kind of a continuation of yesterday's show where we're talking about guys who may not fit these fever pitch needs for the Colts, but they're guys who we like and we think the Colts might like as well. So we will get to that in just a moment. We will see you guys in just a little bit.